It's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. Something that we tend to say sometimes when we're trying to calm somebody down or we're trying to just put things into perspective a little bit, right? It's like, well, it's not the end of the world, so don't worry about it. But then there's that really rare occasion when that doesn't work because it is the end of the world. So what do you say in that case, right? What are you supposed to say to somebody to console someone when it really is the end of all things? That's the kind of strange situation that we find Jesus in the gospel today as he's speaking to his disciples about the end of all things. He says to them that there will be this great tribulation at the end of time when the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light and the stars will be falling from the sky. That moment when heaven and earth will pass away. And then he even adds something that's even a little bit more frightening. He says, "Amen, I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things have taken place." And so according to Jesus, that end of the world is coming very, very soon. It's going to come even in their own generation. And so then we think to ourselves, well, that seems to present a little bit of a problem because obviously we know that the world did not end back then, right? We're still around today. And so what was Jesus talking about? Did he kind of get it wrong? Was he kind of mistaken about this? How do we understand Jesus' words when he says that this generation will not pass away until all these things have taken place? Well, there's a key to unlocking this. There's a key to understanding this. And that key is the Jewish conception of the temple in Jerusalem. The temple in Jerusalem with a capital T. This temple in Jerusalem was the place on earth where God was worshipped. That was the place. That was the center of the entire world for them because this was where God dwelled. The Shekinah, the divine presence. He came down in a cloud and he dwelt within the Holy of Holies within the temple in Jerusalem. And so for the Jews, there was absolutely no place on earth that was holier, that was more important than this temple. This was the most important place on earth. And within this temple, there were a lot of different symbols. There were a lot of important images. There was this large brass bowl full of water, huge. And this brass bowl, it represented the oceans. It represented the sea. Because the Jewish understanding of the temple was that the temple was a microcosm of the entire universe. It was a microcosm of the universe. So they have the oceans. They had the lights in the sky. They had the candles. You think about all the candles. They represented the lights of the sky. They represented the planets that they knew of. And then even on the veil that separated the Holy of Holies from the rest of the temple, on that veil there was embroidered the constellation of the stars, because this temple was meant to show forth the glory of the universe, which was God's temple par excellence. And so this temple was like the universe. And what does Jesus mean then when he says that the stars are going to fall from the sky, that the lights of the world are going to be put out? He's referring to the end of the world, but he's also referring to a very specific historical event that happened in 70 A.D. He's referring to the destruction of the temple. Because in 70 A.D., the Roman soldiers will come through Jerusalem and they'll raise the temple, they'll raise it to the ground, it'll be decimated. And for the Jewish people at the time, that was like the end of the world, right? There was nothing that was more important to them than the temple. And so to have this temple destroyed, this place where God dwelled, it was unimaginable. And all those symbols of the temple, all those lights, everything that was there, everything was gone. It was like the stars of the sky had been extinguished. And so Jesus is predicting this very real historical event that really would happen within their generation. That's why he says this generation will not pass away until all these things have taken place. 70 AD comes around and there go, it happens. And so Jesus, he wasn't mistaken, but his words had this deeper meaning. He had another layer of meaning to them. He was talking about the end of the world. He was talking about the end of all things, but he was also talking about this very immediate and tangible thing that these people were going to experience. It's a very fearful thing. But in the midst of all of that, he gives them hope. He gives them consolation. And these are the words that he shares. He says, "Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away." Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. Whether heaven and earth pass away literally at the end of time, or they pass away symbolically in the destruction of the temple, no matter what happens, Jesus' words will never pass away. They'll never be undone. What a great consolation that is to us to know that the words of Jesus will never pass away. The promises of Jesus will never pass away. The grace and salvation that he offers to us will never pass away. And so even if the entire world around us seems to be crumbling, even the worst thing that we could possibly imagine, even the tragedies of our life, nothing is going to make those words of Jesus pass away. Nothing is going to undo the promises that Jesus has made to us. That's the great promise that we have from Jesus, that even if everything around us is shifting, even if the thing that we think is the most stable thing in the world has suddenly left us, Jesus is our anchor. Jesus is that fixed point, that stable point that's never going to be swept away, and we can always cling to him. And so today, the next time that we have the impulse to say to somebody, it's not the end of the world, maybe we can even add something to that. We can say, it's not the end of the world, and actually, so what if it is? Because the words of Jesus will never pass away, no matter what happens, even at the end of the world. The words of Jesus will never leave us. The words of Jesus will never leave us without hope and without guidance and direction in our lives. May we cling to those words of Jesus. May we cling to the teachings of the Lord. May we cling to his promises, knowing that heaven and earth may pass away, but his words will never pass away.